Hey everyone, just working on getting the clutch pulley assembly installed today. I apologize, I realized I sort of put this back together a little bit before I created the video. But inside here, there's this piece on the outside. Inside here is a roller bearing. Here's the old one. As I've said before, this tractor sat so long, a little rusty, but they actually still roll. But you know, no point in tearing it this far apart and not replacing it. And on the back side of that is a washer. Now, in order to get that out, you would flip it over, just gently one-handed. And if I can shine my light down there for you. You just take like a punch. You can see where the bearing is, and you're actually seeing the real shiny is the washer on the back side, and just pound that out using a punch. It may come out hard, but eventually it'll come out. As many people talk about, make sure you pack this bearing full of grease anytime you have this off or servicing it. It doesn't get oiled or greased very well from the engine, and they say you know this needs greasing if you hear it kind of whining on the crankshaft. So yeah, you can see I got this primed up, John Deere buff primer. I did that because while I had it apart, I wanted to kind of sandblast it a little bit while I didn't have that bearing in there, clean it up real good. So then I got all of the bare metal covered before I put that bearing in. That way later, when I do go to paint all of this, hopefully the work inside there will be minimized. I think on the outside, it's hard to... You can see it. It's kind of pitted a little bit. I might use a little Bondo or something, smooth that up, make it look nicer in the end. But, you know, I can deal with this on the outside pretty easily and cover that up. But I didn't want to be going hog wild cleaning this up with that bearing in there. I cleaned it up as best I could with like a wire brush on a grinder. And then I used a little bit of a sandblaster, but it wasn't working that great. So then I put this thing in Evapo Rust. I have a big 5-gallon bucket of it, and I'm telling you, the thing came out looking brand new. That stuff is incredible. So then after that, you know, I had nice, pretty well clean surfaces, bare metal. I primed it. So now I'm gonna put the dogs and toggles in place on the back side, and we'll work on getting this thing installed on the tractor. So I'll give you guys a quick rundown for those of you that might not know what's going on in these assemblies. So you have these things called the toggles and the dogs, and how it works is inside there it's like a spherical interface. This goes in there on one end, and then you've got a spherical interface here that goes in like that. And you've got your pin that goes through those two lugs. The clutch fork assembly sits in here, and when you actuate the clutch, you're pulling, of course I can't do it right now with one hand. This operating sleeve comes up, there we go. You can see there it slides on that guide pin, and if you watch this one over here, you can see it moves that dog or toggle. Then you have your operating bolts, which I need to clean these up before I install them. They go down in there. Then that's what's basically pulling your clutch facings in and out. One note of caution, when you're taking these apart, and I'm talking from experience here. When I took this assembly off the tractor, one of the lugs was broke, and someone just welded or tried to weld the pin to the lug that had the lug broken off. Well, it was loose, it hadn't stuck. So I got another one of these from someone, and I don't like surprises, so I was taking everything apart. I mean, not much can go wrong in here, but I didn't want to find one of these broken or something. But long story short, it was going out hard. I think I boogered the end of the pin. So then when it got to the lug, one way or another, I broke this lug. I had someone who knew someone that knew they could weld this even though it's cast. So I think they did a pretty good job. They even got it so I can get the pin in and out still yet. So yeah, just a word of caution on that. Go easy with it. But those pins do get kind of stuck in there. Alright, so we're over here. I've got the clutch pulley. I've got the dogs and toggles and the operating bolts. Wanted to talk about this dust shield real quick. Something to note is this dust shield floats a little bit with these bolts, and you got to make sure that it's centered just right. So before you kind of let your gasket and everything dry up and you put your lock wire on, put your pulley assembly on, make sure that it's sitting right, has clearances while it spins. And then don't force this on if it's not lined up. This was from a previous owner. You can see they were, I think, trying to get it on, and this thing wasn't situated right, and so they bent this shield a little bit. I straightened it out some. I may do some more work on it later. And you can see the grease from where I filled that bearing, and I went ahead and was testing it on this. And a good way to tell that you're all the way on is that your gear in here matches up perfectly with this gear here. Don't forget, before you finish putting all this together, to put a quart of oil back here behind this gear. It's kind of splash lubricated, so it puts in some oil down here. That gear rotates in it and then lubes up that gear. Yeah, so I went ahead and tightened these down already. I got to get the lock wire on them. Then we'll get the rest of the pulley and the clutch fork assembly installed. Alright, so we're working on getting the drive disc installed here. I put a clutch facing on the other side of this first, then the drive disc. And something I want to point out is the markings on the drive disc and the marking on the crankshaft. It is very important that these be lined up. So whenever you're installing this, make sure you got that lined up, otherwise things will be out of balance. Alright, so I won't be able to do this one-handed while holding the camera, but after you've got your drive disc, you've got your bonded clutch disc that goes on. Then you've got this one. I don't think it matters which way it goes. They always say check your teeth on this, make sure they're not sharp or worn or anything. And finally, you've got a piece that goes there, and your tensioner plate on the end. Now, note on this piece, you've got the 3 tits, and the springs go on them. They actually sit or straddle around those 3 there. Once you got all that on, all that together, if you want to adjust your clutch in terms of how hard it is to engage or disengage, you do that by adjusting the nuts on the end
When you install these, make sure they go on evenly. So do a little bit by a little bit. The tighter these are on there, the tighter your clutch will be to engage. If you want to loosen them, then back them off. Again, just make sure they're even. And in the end, you know, these are castle nuts. So when you're done, make sure you put your cotter pin in, and then you should be done. All right, well, we'll get moving on to the next video.